Go Big 12 or go home. I'm Brandon Shanahan, joined as always by Midwest broadcasting legend Drew Russell. Drew Russell, how you doing, buddy? It's Sunday. There was football
Sunday.
yesterday.
I'm doing pretty good. I'd say my beloved Iowa State Cyclones are continuing this wild run at 7-0, so I'm in a pretty good mood after a wild game on that last night. I think I look at just the Big 12 as a whole, and once again, the unpredictability of this league just continues to deliver on a day in, day out basis. Pretty remarkable, if we're being honest.
It's October 20th. Going into week 9, the Big 12 has 2 undefeated teams. The conference in the southeastern part of America has 0. Just want to throw that out there. As far as conference supremacy goes, nobody has more undefeated teams than nobody has. No, the Big Ten has a couple of undefeated teams.
Yeah, I
Unfortunately,
think Big
but the
Big
Big
Ten
12.
has a couple. SEC is cannibalizing itself a little bit.
Whoa, it sounds like you're giving them a pass for the same reason that the Big 12 has been shit on for the last few years because the Big 12 cannibalizes itself.
No,
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 no.
no, 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 no. What I mean is it's just eating itself. I'm not saying like I'm giving them a pass at all,
All
though.
right.
Let's make,
That's the
let's make sure
same
we're
bullshit that
clear.
the SEC folks will have looked at the Big 12 over. Like, are you really going to put in a 2-loss Oklahoma team? Yeah, because the Big 12 conference is good and they play 9 conference games. So what if they get an extra loss and don't get a cupcake game like Tarleton State in November?
Fair
Win the
point,
games.
Brandon.
Win your games. That's it. That's all we ask. Win the
Fair,
games.
fair point, Brandon Shanahan. Fair point. That's what at least 2 of our Big 12 teams were able to do this week in terms of staying undefeated in BYU and Iowa State. And both had to have wild comebacks, which we'll get to in just a minute. But a weird week, Brandon. No question about it. Big 12 favorite Utah. Boy, they are deader than dead. Goodness gracious. Brandon Shanahan knew that one too well. I thought for sure Utah would bounce back. Shows what I know. And let's give Cincinnati a lot of credit too. We'll get to that in a minute. But Arizona State just couldn't keep their great run going. A valiant effort from them, but Cincinnati defending their home turf. Other interesting games, West Virginia seat getting a little bit hotter after really another no-show at home in prime time, this time against a good Kansas State team that seems to be working their way back into good graces and putting together a really nice stretch right now. So what a college football slate. And yesterday, not as many great games as there was the week before in terms of wild entertainment, but still, I think we're seeing this playoff picture develop even more as we're over halfway through the season.
It is pretty crazy because, yeah, we are at that time where, like, we can start to really kind of very lightly pencil some stuff in and get some scenarios cooking. Because, I mean, for the first month, it's like, oh, this is silly. I mean, BYU's undefeated. That's silly. Blah, blah, blah. Army, Navy, that's a good story. But now it's like we're almost through October. Like, we don't have that much time left. This is what reality is. Like, once you get to this point, now things could obviously change. Things obviously will change down the road and for everybody involved. But this is where things start to get real, and we're starting to get a good picture on who's for real, who's not. I mean, Utah and even TCU for that matter this season, they've had plenty of opportunities to prove if they're for real. They've failed all of those tests. Same thing with Oklahoma State and then BYU and Iowa State. They've had plenty of opportunities to fail those same tests, and they've come through. And so I think we're starting to get a good vision of the conference where things are heading, and then of course on a national basis.
I think so too, Brandon. What's interesting, I think, about everything that's going on with the Big 12 and just from a national standpoint is just how are they seeding these teams postseason? I saw a bracket last night on ABC. I was flipping back between Iowa State game, Texas, Georgia, and they only had one Big 12 team in. And that was the auto bid, and they gave it to Iowa State. They did not have BYU in the at-large category, which was very interesting to me because I feel like BYU's put together obviously a pretty great season. And they do have some good non-conference wins as well. I am interested how that stuff will look going forward because I am nervous about the Big 12. And you're dead right on the cannibalization stuff. Let's say that BYU, I do get the feeling if BYU and or Iowa State fall the next few weeks. I mean, there's no doubt about it. Big 12 is probably going to be a one-bid league, which I think is a bit of a travesty. I think it can be a two-bid league. Shoot, the way Kansas State's kind of making a run right now, is there a weird chance? I think it could make a three-bid league. Maybe. I kind of doubt it, but I don't know. I just don't want that narrative of, hey, they're only going to get one auto bid and then we're going to fill all of our at-large with the one non-power conference, team, and then a bunch of SEC and Big Ten schools that are part of this cannibalization within their own conferences. But that was a tough team they played. Well, I think the Big 12 has got kind of its own tough teams in certain areas too.
It's interesting because nobody knows what I was going to look. I mean, we haven't even gotten the first CFP rankings, and that will kind of be our first indication on what they think. But I think there absolutely is it depends so much on what happens outside of the Big 12. But I think there, at least at this point, have been three playoff caliber teams in BYU and Iowa State and Kansas State. Now, of course, they'll run into each other, and we'll probably just by nature eliminate at least one of those teams down the stretch. But man, it's so funny because those aren't the three teams that anybody had on the radar. Kansas State was in that top tier for sure, but Iowa State's got some like sneaky love. They're always in like the second tier, and then BYU was predicted to finish last by a lot of folks. So I mean that's so funny, but I think that's what makes the Big 12 conference so great. I'm very curious to see how things will play out, but of course, we're always going to bang the table for the Big 12 to get to get what it's earned. I mean, we're not saying the Big 12 should get 4 bids just because they're the Big 12, but let's let the football speak for itself.
Let it speak for itself. Let the the eyeball test. I mean, Big 12 football's pretty entertaining, and I think it's provided some quality teams. Clearly, I think the non-con schedule, Big 12, and that was the big difference this year, Brandon, compared to last year. Big 12 lost a lot of non-conference games last year, and that really, I thought, hurt our profile. And you and I had a tough time defending that because they did lose. Our top teams lost. That's not the case this year. Iowa State went to Iowa and won. Obviously,
BYU went to SMU
and won.
SMU's going to be a top 15 team here pretty soon.
Yeah, so don't tell me that the Big 12 hasn't found success in the non-con this year. And we'll see. I mean, this is the new world of college athletics. Obviously, teams are trying to change things up. Florida State said it was too good for the ACC just over this summer, and now they are 1-6 on the season. And I just talked to a guy in my apartment who's a big Duke fan, older guy, nice guy, and he was ecstatic. He said he loved that Duke football was able to defeat Florida State. So I thought they were too good for us, and I couldn't help but crack up because just with all that. So Brandon, I think for the Big 12 in general, we'll see how they look. And I think, again, every game matters right now. No question about it. And, it's like the old, not to mention Oakland or Vegas Raiders football, but as the Al Davis, old owner, once said, just win, baby. And I think for many of these Big 12 schools, you just got to keep winning right now. And yesterday and Friday night for BYU, yesterday for Iowa State, they were able to keep doing that. And then there were teams like Texas Tech who kind of laid an egg at home, which we'll get to in a
minute. As we kind of look into this slate through the Big 12, real quick, just want to get your thoughts on this. Kirby Smart was crying about the officiating yesterday in Austin. I don't know if you saw, but there was a very incorrect defensive pass interference penalty late in the game that would have seemingly at the time turned the game on its head, launched Texas back into it. And then the officials were talking about it, and the call was so bad. And this isn't very off-brand for a Texas thing, but the fans started cascading garbage onto the field like just a poverty program. It reminds me last year there's a game in Eastern Iowa where there was a controversial call, and the fans cascaded garbage onto the field. After that, so I think it was like an invalid fair catch signal, which was the right call, by the way. Just because you don't know it's a rule doesn't mean it doesn't exist. But back to last night's, and so it caused a delay. And the officials got together and yeah, we actually botched this. Not shouldn't have been DPI. It's like, never mind. No penalty on the field. Kirby Smart was crying about that. I just want to throw out, I think it's interesting because I think he's going to get fined more for his comments about the officiating than he will for shoving an opposing player for no reason, like he did last week. So things are going great in Athens, but at least they won. That's all that matters, right?
That's all that matters, Brandon Shanahan. And I think you kind of you have so many different viewpoints, you have so many different narratives. I'm just curious how they're going to seed this thing. And we're a few weeks away still, and we still got a lot of games to play. But boy, how are they going to seed this thing? How involved are the networks in terms? Because, I mean, don't get me wrong, ESPN and ABC, they want viewership. We've talked about that in the past, that I feel teams have been left out because they might not be able to draw as many viewers. So who knows? But I do know this. Entertainment level, like we both said last week, it's been great. It has been freaking great.
Now, as we look into the Big 12 slate specifically, got us going Friday night with the fun game. BYU hosted Oklahoma State. Real back and forth battle. Looked like BYU was gonna blow it, and then they come back and win. And another great win for BYU. And I'll say this about another undefeated Big 12 team down the stretch when we get to their game, but they're finding ways to win games. That's really good teams find ways to do. I mean, they're not going to always out talent everybody or out scheme everybody, but they win ball games. That's what it's about.
I want to say this on that game, Brandon. I caught the fourth quarter. What a great college football game. That was such a fun late night game. And I've got to say, BYU's atmosphere is awesome. I would love to go to a game in Provo eventually. The mountains, I'm sure you've seen on Twitter, Brandon, the mountains like beyond the stadium are just beautiful. Like, holy cow. Like, it's incredible. And they looked amazing Friday night. That atmosphere was great. BYU, let's start with them. That last minute drive was insane. It looked like they were dead in the water. Oklahoma State scores just over a minute to go. And BYU goes down, and Jake Ratzliff hits a 35-yard touchdown with 10 seconds to go to propel them to victory. They needed a touchdown, Brandon, and they found it. And I give them a ton of credit. They looked like they were done. I really thought Oklahoma State, which on paper going into the season, you and I thought were the much better team compared to BYU. And frankly, they did look like the better team throughout a good chunk of the night. And it looked like a team that was that 9, 10, 11 win team that you and I thought they were going to be. Instead, they couldn't get it done. BYU finds a way to get it done at home. And for the Cougars, it just continues what has been just a terrific 2024 season. But what a game. Ratzliff's able to get it done. Lassiter on that last touchdown, just insane. But, I was really impressed as well. 25 first downs, Brandon, really even attack with 255 rushing yards, 218 passing yards for BYU. I thought that was really impressive. Their rushing defense was a little disappointing. They gave up 269, but they won, Brandon. And that's ultimately what people are going to remember. What a moment in Provo. That's a game that fans are never going to forget.
Up next, Arizona State and Cincinnati. Arizona State can't quite come through. They lose to Cincinnati 24-14. By the way, I didn't when we had recorded our picks last week, I didn't realize that Jeff Sims had a chance to play. I would have absolutely shot through Cincinnati stock, but nonetheless, I feel like we've been getting pretty high on Cincinnati, a little bit quicker than everybody else. They're 5-2. Took us a little while to catch on at the beginning of the year, but 5-2, that's a good football team. They're in a shot to compete down the road. I don't think this is the year for them, but much further along than I thought they would be through 7 games.
I'm in this kind of the Cincinnati revival, I think is the right way to put it, Brandon. I mean, Kiner gets over 100 yards on the ground. Sorsby had a turnover, but at least over 70% completion percentage on the day. So nothing wrong with that whatsoever. I thought the defense really did a good job of just playing, keeping everything in front. They really weren't able to give up too many like big plays. They had multiple sacks. I gotta say, Brandon, I think for Cincinnati, you and I were very, I think I said this last week too, but I'll just go out of my way to say it again. We were very harsh on them over the offseason. I didn't know if their football program was going to be able to kind of revive itself after Coach Fickle left for Wisconsin. And after a very difficult year one under Coach Satterfield, year two has been much cleaner. It seems maybe just the transition wasn't perfect year one with a bunch of transfers and trying to set a culture and all that. But year two, things are cleaning up. And for Arizona State, this isn't a bad loss at all. Don't you? If you're an Arizona State fan, don't be upset or frustrated that you couldn't get it done on the road. This is a good Cincinnati team. And for Arizona State, again, we didn't think we'd be having the bowl eligibility conversation with them this year. Still just one win away. They're going to get bowl eligibility eventually. So I think the game kind of played out kind of exactly what we kind of thought it would. So nice win.
Yeah, and just for record, I mean, just how harsh we were about Cincinnati. We graded every single Big 12 team, and we did it based on their football season, their men's basketball season, and their outlook. Cincinnati finished dead last, and football was obviously a huge part of that. We didn't think they had a good football season at all. I actually gave them the worst grades in football. And then outlook, it didn't really seem very promising. And even before the season, we're like, we just want to see something out of Coach Satterfield, and we've definitely seen something. So we're absolutely happy to change the tune. I like where Cincinnati's going to. I think the conference gets really good if teams like Central Florida, if teams like Cincinnati, if teams like Houston, hopefully down the road, elevate their status, because it's missing, of course, the marquee blue bloods now that Oklahoma has left. But if we can kind of raise the floor of the conference through teams like that, then that's what really elevates the profile of the conference. So go Cats.
Yeah, it's huge. It's huge. We just need more programs that are going to sustain themselves in the conference. I think we're getting that from our Midwest schools right now. Kansas State's been delivering. Iowa State's been delivering. But we do need Cincinnati to show up. Obviously, BYU's stepping up as well. And it's good to see these new blood teams inserting themselves in a positive way in the conference.
The only game that had more people in the only game that had fewer people than Arizona and Cincinnati is Kansas and Houston, which they say 38,000 people showed up. That seems like a high number based on what I saw on the internet, but nonetheless, Kansas rolled 42-14. Kansas might have figured something out along the way. Houston's also on a down year. Do you take away anything from this in any real form?
I think the crowd. I think that's weirdly kind of what I took away, Brandon. That you're right. Just a disappointing turnout, and that's what happens when you come in at 1-5. You're just not going to have the excitement from a fan base. And for Kansas, it did feel like it was a get-right game. I still think they could be a little bit of a pain in November. I know Iowa State fans are feeling quite good about going down to Kansas City, and don't get me wrong, they might have more fans in KU that day, but it's still not a bad Kansas team. There's a reason they were ranked in the top 25. I'll use an old phrase that Iowa State fans used to make for their football team or basketball team. We're the best 2-6 program in the country. There's no doubt about that. And I feel like Kansas fans maybe are going to try to make that statement right now. Maybe they should. So, but the crowd stood out to me, Brandon. You want positivity and momentum going into a program. Lance Leipold stays after some interest from other schools in the offseason. You're thinking they'll keep building that. And, that is a tough turnout. But I'll continue to say it, ladies and gentlemen, if you're in Kansas City and you don't want to pay hundreds of dollars for tailgating and all that for a Chiefs game, just go for 20 to Kansas. You don't have to go to the game. You could just drink and eat in the parking lot. Get some TVs out there. You can watch college football all day, and you get to live the dream at a 50th of the cost. Just think about it.
It's going to set up for a good matchup in November and December. That's for sure. Just different sport.
No question. I'm curious what the turnouts will be. Iowa State, I think, can show up. I'm curious what Colorado.
Iowa State's going to have a real good turnout.
You just know they will, Brandon. That's just about guaranteed. So when they're selling merchandise already in their various campus bookstores of, Kansas City, like Arrowhead or like Cyclone Head, I don't know what that means. But anyway, I just, they're already promoting it. I know names. So
Up next, a game that caught me off guard: Colorado and Arizona. Colorado rolls 34-7. Noah Fafita effectively shut down once again. And Colorado, I just kind of looks like the real deal. They're 5-2 now. Already more wins than they had all of last season. And I mean, I'm looking at their schedule. Already picked up wins against UCF. I didn't think they would. Arizona, especially after seeing how hot they started, I didn't think they would. And they're going to have an interesting stretch down the road. But no game seems so unwinnable for them that you can chalk it up. But no game, seems like an easy win. Kansas probably would have been the de facto there, but now Kansas is starting to breathe some life in. What's wrong with Noah Fafita? Let's start there.
yeah, Arizona as a total had less than 250 yards of offense yesterday, Brandon, and I'm pretty surprised because Colorado's defense has been porous at times. They're not afraid to give up points. Usually, they've been in some shootouts where Shedeur Sanders has to find a way to get it done if they look to win. I don't know. For Arizona, this has to be a disappointing result considering just the talent that came back. And they lose their coach in the offseason, Brandon, and most of the players still stayed at Arizona despite a coaching change, despite an era where you can just transfer at any time.
Yeah.
This is a disappointing result. No question about it. And I think going forward, what does that look like? Like, what does that look like for Arizona? It will be interesting to see just what they can do. What can they build going forward? And for Colorado, this is a good win, though. Give them credit.
Good
They
win.
absolutely waxed them. They set a tone the first 30 minutes. They had Travis Hunter didn't even play the second half due to kind of working through an injury, and they built up a healthy lead. So for Colorado, this is a really positive result. I mean, 5-2, considering the way they collapsed last season, kind of, they get hot, they're
Yeah.
in national conversation for 4 weeks, and they just fell off. This is really positive for Coach Sanders and his staff. Like, they should be happy they're at 5-2, considering all the offseason chaos and considering they're ripping their offensive line, saying they're terrible, which I'm not saying they're good, but still not a great look publicly. And I gotta say, there was little drama in their victory. They just took care of their business. I could make an argument it's the most impressive win of the Deion Sanders era.
Certainly make that case, and they're just fine. And we talked about this a little bit with BYU, but good teams just find ways to win,
Yeah.
whether it's holding off a late surge from North Dakota State, or getting into kind of a slower rock fight with Colorado State, or a shootout where you have to hit a Hail Mary passes, time expires against Baylor, or games where you jump ahead and stay ahead like UCF and Arizona. And I mean, you have a tough loss against Kansas State. That's the kind of game that could derail the season if it's not well put together. But Colorado, to my surprise, I think more than anybody's, is putting together a good season. No notes. They host Cincinnati this week. This will be another tough one from teams that are better than I thought they would be. Colorado's going to be a tough place to play at night.
No question about it, Brandon. I think going forward, if their defense can continue to make these positive steps, and maybe it's just Arizona's offense is a little bit off right now, but I want to give Colorado's defense credit. Similar to this might be their finest win. Like, I feel like the offense has had to bail them out. Travis Hunter's had to bail them out in multiple games. This really was a complete team performance. So they've earned their keep, and it's still a team that could definitely put the potentially really good bowl game going forward.
And potentially, I mean, they're 5-2. One of those losses is out of conference. They could make a run towards Arlington. They certainly have a path to it. If they play like they played last night, and Travis Hunter can, find a way to get healthy, watch out. Watch
Well, I'm
out.
looking at their schedule, Brandon. I mean, or Cincinnati, Texas versus Cincinnati, at Texas Tech versus Utah, at Kansas versus Oklahoma State. That Cincinnati game's a really interesting one next week. That's a late night game. Cincinnati is a team that is really, you and I just kind of sung their praises of kind of how much they've kind of battled back. That one feels like, I don't know how that one's going to play out. I really don't. That probably will be my lowest confidence game of the week if I have to guess, because I think both teams are playing quality football right now.
Up next, we have the Butt Bowl, Baylor and Texas Tech. There they are. There they are. There's that Texas Tech team that we were so worried about at the beginning of the season. They hid for a little while. They played some good football, but I found them. They were in Lubbock last night, getting their doors blown off by a now 3-win Baylor team. And it's the exact kind of formula to what we saw early in the season, where they're throwing 49 times a night, and they're just not able to piece together good enough defense to hold Sawyer Robinson from less than 5 touchdowns.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, you don't have to play great defense, especially in this league, but boy, you have to do something. But tough stuff. Now, granted, Baylor did pull away late, so man, what a tough outing for the Red Raiders, who almost had us. I could feel the energy. They almost had us all the way back.
I was so ready to say they were back, Brandon, and they couldn't get it done. I look at, like Bryson Washington for Baylor was their leading rusher. He had just 10 carries, but 116 yards, 11.6 yards a carry, Brandon. Defense gave up over 500 yards for Texas Tech. This was a vintage Texas Tech game where the offense played pretty well for the most part, and then the defense just couldn't stop one person on earth. For Baylor fans, this has got to be infuriating, though. Like, this team, I still don't think is that bad. I've been saying it all like season long. It's probably, I don't know what's going to happen with Coach Dave Aranda, or Aranda, excuse me. But like, they're not bad. But for Texas Tech, gosh dang it, guys, I was so ready. I thought you had learned. I was so ready to say, welcome back, Red Raiders. I was thinking maybe they got a dark horse shot looking into Arlington, and just the unpredictability of this season, Brandon, it just continues to deliver on a week in, week out basis.
It's tough because I feel like there's a lot of Baylor fans who have already turned on the coaching staff, but like with a performance like this, does Baylor they think about keeping Dave Rand if he puts together a couple more wins this year, or do you start fresh? And I mean, I guess the same could be said for Texas Tech, but where's that line? Because it kind of seems like they're in purgatory.
Depends on the school, right, Brandon? I mean, if you're Alabama, they're already fed up with Kalen DeBoer. He's lost 2 games. They said, like, Vanderbilt, like Bama fans want him gone after losing to Vanderbilt. Yeah. And it just does depend on the school. I mean, for Baylor, historically, before Art Briles showed up, this is a traditionally not a great tradition in the world of football. And Art Briles kind of ushered them in towards a big era. I mean, they were very good for many years under Art Briles. I'm not going to mention their after that happened, I'm not going to mention certain coaches that maybe had a horrible performance yesterday in a different conference. Like in terms of that era of what was going on. And I think with Dave Aranda, it depends on what those boosters are saying to the AD. That's really what it breaks down to. And I get the feeling those boosters just are still not happy, if I have to guess. But who knows? And for Texas Tech, who knows with Coach McGuire? I just know that on paper, they should have won that game yesterday at home versus Baylor team that has a losing record. Not a lot of positive energy in that program right now. And they got their doors, as you said, their doors blown off.
And then I'll hold this game till the end here. So we'll skip ahead. Kansas State and West Virginia. Boy, watch out for Kansas State. I mean, not just Big 12 wise, but around the country. Because we were very skeptical early on the season about Avery Johnson is a passer, and they coined the term. He's a very good football player. I don't think he's a very good quarterback. And so West Virginia knew that. They came into that game. They're like, all right, we're going to make him work from the pocket. We're going to make him throw the ball downfield. We're not going to let him run. We're not going to let Giddens or Edwards torch us as well. We're going to stack the box. And Avery Johnson picked him apart. So it feels a lot like when Happy Gilmore learned how to putt.
Yeah, I'd agree with yeah, well, that's perfect. I like that quite a bit there, Brandon. I mean, Kansas State, great defensive performance. Get the multiple sacks. West Virginia had to play multiple QBs. They were inefficient against that Kansas State defense. Defense played really well, and that was a vintage Kansas State performance, honestly. It wasn't exactly pretty at times. I know their offense put up numbers, but they really could do some damage, Brandon. You and I will continue to say that, and they're a power. There's no doubt about that. And for West Virginia, man, you got to just, I don't know on them either. I know we just talked about that with Baylor and Texas Tech. What is going to be the status with Neil Brown going forward? I think you can't lose those home games.
They just extended them.
Did give him another deal, but I mean, this is college foot sports now, Brandon. It doesn't. These contracts, like for example, this is not football, but like basketball this week in Virginia. Tony Bennett retired 3 weeks before the season. Right, won the 2019 NCAA championship. This guy, Brandon, like, it's fascinating that he just got extended in June to 2030, like by Virginia to coach their team. And then he says, I'm going to retire.
Never mind.
So, like, I think when it comes to these coaching contracts, you and I both know they're pretty meaningless. Pretty much if you're an agent these days, life is good, though. If you're a football agent, life is good because these programs are so desperate to win every single one of them because there's so much money pumped in.
Oh man, I'm trying to get word on this, on what a Neil Brown buyout would be. I guess it'd only be $10 million if they fired him after the season, which compared to some of the buyouts that we've seen.
I mean, Jimbo Fisher got what, 70 million, 75 million Jimbo did from A&M. Like, kind of insane.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that seems more doable. Boy. That doesn't seem like great work by Neil Brown's agent to negotiate that deal.
I'm going to tell you right now, Brandon, I would happily get fired for $10 million.
Absolutely.
I would go on the record. I'd retire. Never would work again if you just can me right now. If you got those type of funds, Brandon, you just want to fire me for $10 million, I will happily never show up on the podcast again. I'll tell you that right now. I don't want to scare you, but I'll admit, if you paid me $10 million to never show up again, I would. I'll still talk to you weekly, happily, but I just would. I would not touch the podcast happily. I would happily talk to you.
As the great Ed Orgeron said, show me where the door is and how fast you want me to leave. That's all it takes.
Coach O's a genius. Coach O's a genius, man. Got his national championship. Still a cult legend in the state of Louisiana, despite getting fired, and made a ton of money. Coach O's a hero to me. Love Coach O.
Oh man, love Coach O. And that's part of the downside of him being so chill, which is getting a $20 million check and fucking off forever. Is that he needs to be back in college football.
We need him.
We need him.
He is like Coach O. If you're thinking about like football coaches that legit define the sport, he's number one. Like when I think college football, I really do think Coach O, or I did for a lot of years. The voice, the grumbling, just a football guy's football guy. I love Coach O. He is badly missed in the sport. I don't know if he'll coach again. I don't know, but he is badly missed. There's no doubt.
Up next, the nightcap of Saturday night made for a good. And my favorite thing about Utah getting this night game so often is that it makes for a real good Sunday morning hate scroll. And all of the tweets that magically pop up on my Twitter feed about how they're going to come in, run the conference, nothing but a truck stop conference, just biding their time for the Big Ten to send an invite, and then they get beat up pretty bad by TCU, who just 2 weeks ago got blown out by Houston, who got beat by Kansas. Like, this TCU team is not any good, and TCU uh, handled Utah. It wasn't like a big blowout or anything,
Yeah.
but it really didn't feel. As soon as TCU got a lead, it didn't really feel like Utah had much of a chance with how they play.
It feels like a swing game, doesn't it, Brandon? Like, no question about it. That, well, it was a swing game for us, and Brandon Shanahan once again picks up more points on me and has actually extended his lead. But I think for Utah, this is just pretty laughably funny, almost, if you're a hater, which you and I are, Brandon. So this is
Yeah, it's a great
enjoyable.
day for the
It's
haters.
enjoyable for me and you. Yeah, it wasn't pretty. I only watched the second quarter, and I had to just shut it off, Brandon. My brain couldn't compute with it anymore. For TCU, good road win. Potentially helps with bowl eligibility. For Utah, this is just simply put a cluster disaster. There's no doubt about it. They had it in their grasp. They thought they could run the Big 12, and instead, they haven't. And now the questions are going forward. Now there are these weird looming questions. Now you have controversy at the QB play of, does your 7-year senior, potentially 8-year senior, even want to play football anymore? That seems to be kind of a big thing. And I think that's been a distraction for the team. The energy has been off for this program the last month. It is clearly shown on the field. And they don't look like a team that was in the, what were they, preseason top 15, somewhere in that
Yeah,
range,
they're the highest
Brandon.
ranked Big 12 team.
Yeah, they were the highest ranked Big 12 team in the preseason. They haven't looked like that at all. They played scared. I still think their defense hasn't been bad. I think their
The defense is
defense has
actually,
been
yeah, they've been
fine.
good.
Yeah, no, I'm not blaming their defense, but that offense has been abysmal, and it's been a bottom 3 offense in the Big 12 this last month. I think the only team I would say it's worse is Houston. They've just been, it's been lifeless offensively. It's shown. They're getting good crowds still at home because there was so much expectation coming in the season, but those fans have got to be disappointed with this program right now.
No doubt about it. I did see somebody bring up the fact that they saw how good Zach Wilson was at BYU, and they're like, we'll go get his younger brother, and it doesn't work out, which is very funny because one, all the success that Zach Wilson had at BYU, funny as a Utah fan, then to try to capture that in a bottle a little bit and come up so empty. And now, granted, he's a true freshman. There was no obvious intention for him to play this year with Scam Rising getting hurt once again. But a great day to be a hater. And Utah, and there are good Utah fans, and I've interacted with some of them as well, and they're fine. But there are a lot. There's a very loud minority in that fan base that I know is just kicking the tires today.
I would agree with that, Brandon. I would agree, but we'll see going forward what Utah can bring to the table, and can they find some type of offensive magic these last 5 weeks of the season? Obviously, you're out of contention for any Big 12 championship aspirations. Your college football playoff hopes are dead. But again, each of these games matter, and they're going to try to play spoiler on some of these teams going forward.
And just to kind of put it in perspective here, so they got Houston next week. That should be a pretty good win for Utah. Houston might not score, which puts Utah in a favorable position. Then they host BYU, which, as good as BYU's been, that's a heated rivalry in Salt Lake City. They go to Colorado, who, I mean, this will be the best Colorado team they've faced in the last half decade, and then host Iowa State, also really good team, and then go on the road to Central Florida. I'm not seeing 2 sure wins there, which is what they would need to get to 6 wins. Am I crazy for thinking that
I'm not.
there's a chance?
Yeah,
There's a
you're
chance.
not crazy, bro. You're not crazy, Brandon. I mean, I really liked their odds last night, clearly, and they didn't get it done. I mean, it really is that simple. So at the end of the day, they gotta go back to the drawing board, refigure it out, and readjust. It really is that simple.
Last point about the game. One of the things that have made me fall in love with this conference is the TCU burner army on Twitter. It's a different universe. There's nothing else like it. The Calgorithm got pretty close, but the TCU burners have been in full effect, in particular because Utah fans, they went to the 2 Rose Bowls, and then for a long time, like way longer than they probably should have had the Roses in their Twitter usernames, to let everybody know that Utah did, in fact, play in a Rose Bowl. They didn't win either of them, by the way, just in case you're forgotten. TCU, however, has won a Rose Bowl. They might even be the most recent Big 12 team to win a Rose Bowl with Andy Dalton over Wisconsin. So, of course, all the Twitter army had the Rose in the Twitter handle. So, shout out to the TCU burner army. Doesn't get any better.
They are icons, Brandon, and I know you're proud to be a part of that group and be a part of the haters. I know you are. I'll tell you what, ladies and gentlemen, Brandon Shanahan's one of the best haters in sports history. I'll tell it right. I got to just say it. Brandon Shanahan knows how to be a generational hater.
I mean, I don't want to like pat myself on the back too hard, but I did find a way to equate the Georgia Texas game on the fly to Eastern Iowa debacle from last year. So when I'm humming, it's hard to get better. Last game, I want to talk about certainly no hate being passed around in this game. Iowa State's in an absolute dogfight with Central Florida, and Ames at night. Rocco Beck started off pretty shaky, and then when the lights got bright, I thought, boy, UCF better not give Rocco Beck the football again, and they did, and he made him pay for it. Rocco Beck down the stretch, unbelievable. Iowa State wins.
That last drive was incredible, Brandon. It felt like they were done. And somehow they got it going. I want to give Harvey of UCF a lot of credit.
Oh, he was
is
unbelievable.
Such a good tailback, and he had a great game. Iowa State's linebacking depth is pretty limited, and he was outstanding all game. But for Rocco Beck to engineer that drive, no timeouts, and find a way to get it done was incredible. And talked about how for BYU, their comeback fans will never forget. For Iowa State fans, they'll never forget that comeback either. That was only their 5th game in school history, Brandon, that they played as a top 10 team. And they're 1-3 in those first 4 games. And they probably easily could have been 1-4 after last night, but they found a way. Am I ecstatic how they played? No, not necessarily. If UCF had a more dynamic passing attack, I think they could have won. Rocco Beck throwing multiple pick sixes, not exactly great on that one.
It's not a winning formula.
No, and they did get lucky. I'll put it bluntly. UCF absolutely made enough plays to win. No question about it. I won't lie about that. But this season's been very different for Iowa State. It's been a fun year. It's been a phenomenal, just, as an Iowa State fan, just so much pain throughout my life. So for them to kind of put together what they've been able to put together has been really special, Brandon. It's been really special for sure. So obviously for them going forward, we'll see what they can do. I feel for UCF a little bit because they made enough plays to win, but Iowa State's defense got stopped. And Rocco Beck made the throws he had to make that final drive. And obviously that QB rush was just sheer energy with 30 seconds to go.
My favorite thing about this run for Iowa State is every week now we get some just absurd first time since stat. This is Iowa State's first time being 7-0 since 1938. Matching the best start in school history. So I guess we won't get another one last year, but just to put that in perspective, that was like in the heat of World War II. That was the last time Iowa State had a start this good.
Yep. Yeah, we're still in the Great Depression. We're still in the Great Depression, Brandon. We had FDR as president, and life was pretty difficult. And I think Iowa State will have a bye this upcoming week. I think it's a good time for a bye because I'm sure the coaching staff was not ecstatic with how certain things played throughout the game. So I think this is a game where you're happy you won, you celebrate the win, but like you're going back to the drawing board and saying, hey, this November slate, we got 5 games and we've got to be sharp from day one. Otherwise, we're not going to be as lucky next time. And they won't be. I mean it. They play enough tough teams down the stretch that'll make them pay for those mistakes next time.
Yeah, it's a good time to be an Iowa State fan because good teams find ways to win. They make plays when they need to late. And yeah, when you have a start like Rocco Becht had, it would have been so easy for them to just pack it in. And I also have to give credit to our friend of the show, Arthur Gustavo Malzahn III. It looked like there was a point where his team was punting on the season, and for them to come into Ames and that kind of
Yeah,
environment and
agreed.
really give them their best foot forward, that's not nothing. I mean, Rocco Becht made a couple more plays down the stretch, but that would have been a marquee win for the Malzahn season. It just happened to run into back Rocco magic or whatever they want to tag it.
Yeah. I probably all my love for Gus Malzahn, I think would have went out the window. I don't know if I could have loved
Yeah,
Gus ever again if we had
that's fair.
lost last night. I can't say that I love Gus Malzahn. The guy's so funny. Just for UCF, this is a tough loss though, because that you're right, Brandon. They should have won, could have easily won. I thought their defense played very well. I know they gave up 38 in the end, but you get 2 pick sixes. That's something.
Yeah.
I mean, that's something.
Those are big plays.
I thought Rocco was off for a good chunk of the night too. Like I think they did some nice stuff against him. They had a great running attack. They really took advantage of that. So tough loss for them. But for Iowa State fans, I know it wasn't pretty. I know probably national pundits are like, well, maybe they'll drop them in the polls. I don't really care if they do. We won and we keep this undefeated season going. I think we hit that bye really at a good time. I think we need to get a little healthier, especially that linebacking position. But this feels good, Brandon. There's no question about it. It's every day is a good day to be a Cyclone. It's just some days are better than others.
Top 10 football team, top 10 men's basketball team, top 10 women's basketball team. It's a good time. Throwing cross country in there, a little garnish.
A lot of people say, I'm telling you, you go to Ames, Iowa, it's a special place, ladies and gentlemen. It's a special place.